Wanted housekeeper. Salary, $8,000 month. Live-in required. Sensitive candidates need not apply. Magnolia Bloom reread the ad for the 10th time that morning, sitting on the dusty bench at the Meadowbrook, Oklahoma bus station. $8,000 per month to clean a house. This had to be a joke, a typo, or worse, one of those traps her grandmother always warned her about regarding big city men with questionable intentions. But Magnolia, or Maggie as everyone called her, was desperate. And desperate people do reckless things, like responding to suspicious internet ads at 3 in the morning when your grandmother's hospital bill looks like a life sentence in red numbers. Her phone buzzed. A message from the unknown number that had responded to her application in less than 2 hours. Ms. Bloom, interview today, 2 p.m., Blackwell Mansion, Beacon Hill, Boston. Punctuality is essential. Tardiness will not be tolerated. Mrs. Pemberton, house manager. Maggie looked at the station clock, 6:47 a.m. She had exactly $847 in her account, her entire savings from 3 years working at Dolores's cafe, plus the tips she'd been collecting in a cookie tin. It would be enough for a one-way bus ticket to Boston. One way. No plan B, no safety net. She thought about her grandmother sleeping in the county hospital, connected to tubes and machines that beeped with each labored breath. She thought about the farm they'd lost the previous year, the old pickup truck that had finally died last week, the bills piling up like an insurmountable mountain. Maggie bought the ticket. 12 hours later, she stood before the most intimidating iron gates she'd ever seen in her life. They weren't just gates. They were a statement. "You don't belong here!" they seemed to scream. Intricate, black as night, with details that probably cost more than her entire hometown. "Identification," barked a voice from the intercom. Magnolia Bloom. I have an interview at 2 o'clock with Mrs. Pemberton." Silence. Then a mechanical click, and the gates began to open with a dramatic and completely unnecessary slowness. The mansion appeared gradually as she climbed the cobblestone driveway. It wasn't a house. It was an architectural threat. Victorian, Gothic, immense, as if someone had asked, "How much is too much?" and then added 3 more floors. A woman appeared on the main staircase before Maggie even reached the door. Tall, thin as a pin, with gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it probably explained her perpetually sour expression. "Late," the woman declared, looking at a gold pocket watch. 2 minutes and 17 seconds late. "The bus," Maggie began, but the woman had already turned her back and entered the house, clearly expecting her to follow. The interior was even more impressive. And impressive wasn't necessarily a compliment. Everything was dark, heavy, expensive, as if someone had walked into a furniture store and said, "I want everything that looks like it came from a haunted castle. I am Mrs. Pemberton. I have managed this property for 23 years, the woman spoke as she marched through endless hallways, her heeled boots marking a military rhythm on the marble. Mr. Blackwell is a very particular man. He demands excellence, efficiency, and above all, invisibility." "Invisibility?" Maggie nearly tripped over a Persian rug. "You do your work without being seen, heard, or remembered. Mr. Blackwell does not tolerate incompetence, unnecessary conversation, or weepy, dramatic female presence. The last housekeeper lasted 4 days. What happened to her?" Mrs. Pemberton stopped abruptly and turned, her gray eyes analyzing Maggie like a scientist would analyze a particularly uninteresting bacterium. She made the fatal mistake of trying to befriend Mr. Blackwell. She offered him coffee, with a smile. The woman said smile, as if it were a curse word. "He does not appreciate kindnesses." Maggie swallowed hard. $8,000 a month. Grandmother's hospital bill. No plan B. Understood. Invisible. No smiles. Noted. They climbed a narrow service staircase to the 3rd floor. The room that would be Maggie's was small, simple, but infinitely cleaner and more organized than anywhere she'd ever lived. A window overlooked the back gardens, acres of meticulously trimmed green. Uniform in the closet. Hours: 5 a.m. to 1 p.m., Monday through Saturday. You clean the east wing in the morning, before Mr. Blackwell wakes. He cannot see you. Ever. Mrs. Pemberton opened a thick folder. Confidentiality agreement. You do not speak about Mr. Blackwell, his routines, his habits, or anything that happens in this house. Violations result in immediate dismissal and legal action. Maggie took the pen with trembling hands and signed. She signed everything. She would have signed a pact with the devil at that moment, if it came with health insurance and advance salary. Start tomorrow, 5 in the morning, not a minute later. Mrs. Pemberton left the room, then returned, her head appearing through the door. And Miss Bloom? Mr. Thaddeus Blackwell is not an easy man. He is complicated. Keep your distance, do your work, and perhaps you'll last longer than 4 days. The door closed, and Maggie was alone. She threw herself on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. What the hell had she just done? Moved into a haunted mansion to work for a man who apparently hated smiles and the existence of female employees. Her phone beeped. Message from the night shift nurse. Your grandmother asked for you today. She was more alert. Good sign. Maggie felt hot tears stream down her face. Right. She could do this. She would be the best invisible housekeeper this haunted mansion had ever seen. She'd stay away from this Thaddeus Blackwell and his impossible demands. Simple as that. She had no way of knowing that in approximately 12 hours, all these careful plans would go down the drain in a spectacularly disastrous manner, involving a bucket, 3 ladders, a $50,000 crystal glass collection, and the worst boss encounter in the history of disastrous jobs. But that would be tomorrow. For now, Maggie Bloom from rural Oklahoma was in Boston, in a mansion that looked like it had been decorated by Victorian vampires with too much money, about to work for a man who had problematic written in capital letters all over his job description. She should have bought a return ticket. The alarm screamed at 4:30 a.m. like a banshee with a personal vendetta. Maggie jolted awake, momentarily confused about why her ceiling looked so unfamiliar and expensive. Then it all came crashing back. Boston, mansion, invisible housekeeper for a man who hated smiles. Right. She scrambled into the gray uniform that hung in her closet, a dress so utilitarian it could double as a prison outfit. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a terrified girl playing dress-up in someone else's life. You've got this, Magnolia June Bloom, she whispered to herself. Just clean some rooms and don't be seen. How hard can it be? Famous last words. By 5:15 a.m., she was armed with more cleaning supplies than a small army would need and a hand-drawn map of the East Wing that looked like it required a PhD to decipher. Mrs. Pemberton had left it under her door with a note. Master Suite off limits until 9 a.m. Do not deviate from schedule. The East Wing was a museum of excess. Every surface gleamed, which made Maggie wonder what exactly she was supposed to clean. The place was already immaculate. She dusted picture frames of scowling ancestors, polished doorknobs that didn't need polishing, and vacuumed carpets that probably cost more than her childhood home. Everything was going perfectly. Suspiciously perfectly. Then she reached the library. Sweet baby Jesus in a manger, the library. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a rolling ladder, leather chairs that looked like butter, and windows that flooded the space with early morning light. It was the most beautiful room Maggie had ever seen. And there, on the top shelf, sat a collection of crystal glasses covered in a fine layer of dust. Her fingers itched. Those glasses were crying out to be cleaned, practically begging for it, but they were so high up. She eyed the rolling ladder. Mrs. Pemberton's voice echoed in her head. Do not deviate from schedule. But technically, the library was on the schedule, and those glasses were in the library. So really, she'd be following orders. Maggie climbed. The ladder was older than it looked and squeakier than a mouse choir. Each rung protested her weight with concerning creaks. But she made it to the top, triumphant, already imagining Mrs. Pemberton's grudging approval when she saw those sparkling glasses. She reached for the first one, a delicate piece of art that caught the morning light like a prism. That's when she heard it. The door opening. Maggie froze, her hand wrapped around the crystal stem, her body twisted at an awkward angle on a ladder that was suddenly feeling very unstable. "What?" said a voice that could cut diamonds. "The hell are you doing in my private library?" She turned too fast. The ladder rolled. Her bucket of cleaning supplies tipped. And Maggie watched in slow-motion horror as she, the ladder, 3 bottles of expensive wood polish, 1 very full bucket of soapy water, and 6 priceless crystal glasses, all decided to defy gravity at the exact same moment. She hit something solid and warm before she hit the floor. When Maggie opened her eyes, she was sprawled across the chest of the most devastatingly handsome man she'd ever seen, which was really unfortunate timing, considering she'd just drenched him in soapy water and was possibly about to be murdered. Thaddeus Blackwell, and it could only be him, stared up at her with eyes so dark they looked black. His jaw was clenched so tight she worried about his dental health. His hair, now soaking wet, was the color of midnight, and his expression suggested he was mentally composing her obituary. "I can explain," Maggie squeaked. "You're on my chest," he said, each word precisely enunciated. "Soaking wet, having just destroyed what I assume was my morning piece, possibly my antique ladder, and—" He looked around at the puddles and scattered crystal. "My sanity. Please, by all means, explain." She scrambled off him, slipping twice in the soapy water, managing to elbow him in the ribs during her escape. "I'm so sorry. I'm the new housekeeper. I was just cleaning the glasses. They were dusty, and the ladder rolled, and—" "The new housekeeper." He sat up slowly, water dripping from his white shirt, which was now completely see-through and revealing a chest that definitely did not belong on someone with such a terrible personality. The one who was supposed to be invisible. "I'm usually very good at being invisible. You're currently the opposite of invisible. You're aggressively visible. You're violently, catastrophically visible." He stood, somehow making even rising from a puddle look elegant and intimidating. "What's your name?" "Magnolia Bloom, sir, but everyone calls me Maggie." "Of course they do." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Of course your name is Magnolia Bloom, because this day needed to be more absurd." He looked at her properly for the first time, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. "How old are you?" 23, sir." "Stop calling me sir. It makes me feel ancient." He was probably in his early 30s, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers and intimidating boardroom meetings. Mrs. Pemberton hired a 23-year-old from, let me guess, somewhere very far from here. "Oklahoma," she caught herself. "Oklahoma. Oklahoma." He repeated it like it was a foreign word. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." They stood there, dripping, surrounded by chaos, staring at each other. Maggie waited for him to fire her. He seemed to be waiting for something too, though she couldn't imagine what. Finally, he spoke. "Clean this up, all of it. And Miss Bloom? Learn to be invisible or learn to be unemployed. Those are your only 2 options." He walked out, leaving wet footprints on the Persian rug, and Maggie released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her first encounter with Thaddeus Blackwell, an unmitigated disaster. She should have been terrified. She should have been packing her bags. Instead, standing in that puddle of soapy water and broken dreams, Maggie Bloom caught herself thinking about the way his wet shirt had clung to his shoulders, and the brief moment of surprise in his eyes when he'd actually looked at her. She was in so much trouble. And not just the unemployment kind. Maggie spent the rest of that day becoming a ghost. She cleaned silently, moved through rooms like smoke, and practically held her breath whenever she heard footsteps. Mrs. Pemberton had given her a look that morning that could curdle milk. Apparently, news of the library disaster had spread faster than wildfire. "You're still here," the house manager had said, sounding genuinely surprised. "He didn't fire you." "Should I be worried that you're surprised?" The last housekeeper spilled coffee on his newspaper. She was gone within the hour. Mrs. Pemberton had leaned in conspiratorially. He must be feeling merciful or curious. Neither is typical. 3 days passed. 3 days of Maggie successfully avoiding Thaddeus Blackwell, which should have felt like a victory, but instead felt strangely disappointing. She'd catch glimpses of him. A broad shoulder disappearing around a corner, his voice drifting from his study during phone calls that sounded like verbal warfare, the scent of his cologne lingering in hallways. She learned his patterns. He took his coffee at 6 a.m. black in the morning room facing the gardens. He worked in his study until noon. He received visitors on Tuesdays and Thursdays, all men in expensive suits who looked like they ate small businesses for breakfast. He played piano at night when he thought no one could hear. That last part surprised her. The music would drift up through the vents around 11 p.m., sometimes angry and stormy, sometimes achingly beautiful. It didn't match the cold man who'd glared at her from a puddle of soapy water. On Friday morning, Maggie decided to do something monumentally stupid, apologize properly. She'd replayed their encounter 1,000 times, and each time she felt worse. Yes, she'd been clumsy, but she'd also been terrified and defensive. The man deserved an actual apology, not her squeaky panic rambling. She found him in the morning room, exactly where she knew he'd be, reading something on his tablet with the kind of focus that could probably split atoms. "Mr. Blackwell?" He looked up, and genuine surprise crossed his face. "Miss Bloom, I was beginning to think you'd moved out and no one told me. I've been practicing being invisible, like you said. Clearly you're excellent at it. I haven't seen you in days." He set down his tablet. "Though I have noticed the house is considerably cleaner and my crystal collection remains intact, so you're apparently good at your actual job." Was that a compliment? From the man who'd looked at her like she was a natural disaster in human form? "I wanted to apologize, properly, for the library incident." Maggie twisted her hands together. "I was careless and presumptuous, and I destroyed your morning and nearly broke your nose, and my nose survived, barely." The corner of his mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? "Though my dignity took considerable damage." "I'm sorry about your dignity too." This time he definitely almost smiled. "You're very thorough with your apologies. My grandmother raised me right. Well, she tried. Obviously the grace and coordination lessons didn't take." "Your grandmother?" His expression shifted to something softer, more human. "Mrs. Pemberton mentioned she's ill. Is she improving?" Maggie blinked. He'd asked about her grandmother. "She has good days and bad days. The doctors are optimistic, which is good because I'm aggressively optimistic by nature, so we match." Aggressive optimism. Thaddeus studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "That explains a lot about you. Is that a compliment or an insult?" "I haven't decided yet." He picked up his coffee cup, then paused. "Miss Bloom, do you know why I didn't fire you?" Her heart hammered. "Because you're secretly nice underneath all the scowling?" "Because you apologized." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "That day in the library. You apologized immediately, genuinely, and then you actually fixed the mess you made. Most people in this house just make excuses." "Oh." Maggie felt her cheeks heat. "That's a pretty low bar for employment. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it." He stood, and suddenly they were much closer than the room had seemed a moment ago. He was tall. She had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "You can stop being quite so invisible, Miss Bloom, as long as you stop trying to redecorate my library with soapy water." "I'll do my best, Mr. Blackwell." "Thaddeus." The word hung between them. "If you're going to nearly kill me with falling crystal, we should probably be on a first-name basis." "Thaddeus." She tested the name. It felt intimate, dangerous. "And I'm Maggie." "I know. You told me while you were sprawled across my chest, dripping on my shirt. Are you ever going to let me live that down?" "Absolutely not." And there it was. A real smile. Small, quick, but genuine. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, almost boyish. It's the most entertainment I've had in this house in years. He walked past her, and Maggie caught that scent again, something expensive and woodsy, and entirely too appealing. "Thaddeus?" she called after him. He turned, one eyebrow raised. The piano playing at night. It's beautiful. For a moment he looked completely blindsided, vulnerable. Then the walls went back up, but not quite as high as before. "You should be sleeping at 11 p.m., Miss Bloom." "Maggie," she corrected. "And you should take compliments better, Thaddeus." He shook his head, but she could have sworn she heard him laugh as he walked away. Maggie stood in the morning room, grinning like an idiot, her heart doing acrobatics in her chest. This was dangerous. This job was supposed to be temporary, earn money, save her grandmother, go home. She wasn't supposed to notice how he smiled, or how his music made her chest ache, or how her name sounded different when he said it. She definitely wasn't supposed to be falling for the tyrant of Beacon Hill. But Maggie had never been good at following rules. The storm rolled into Boston on a Tuesday afternoon like an unwelcome relative, loud, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. Maggie was polishing silver in the dining room when the first thunderclap rattled the windows. She'd never been afraid of storms back home, but Oklahoma storms were different. They were familiar. This Boston thunder sounded angry, personally offended by something. By 6 p.m., the power was out. Mrs. Pemberton had left early for her sister's birthday dinner. The cook had already gone home, and according to the staff schedule, Maggie was alone in the mansion with Thaddeus. Alone. In the dark. With the man whose smile she'd been replaying in her mind for 3 days straight. Completely professional. Totally fine. Not at all nerve-wracking. She was searching for candles in the kitchen when she heard the crash from upstairs, followed by a string of cursing that would make a sailor blush. Maggie grabbed her flashlight and ran. She found Thaddeus in his study, surrounded by scattered books, holding his hand at an awkward angle. Blood dripped onto the Persian rug. Another Persian rug, because apparently this house was trying to collect them all. "Don't," he warned, seeing her approach. "Don't say anything helpful or caring. I'm not in the mood. You're bleeding on your carpet." "I'm aware, thank you." But he was pale, and his jaw was clenched in that way that meant he was in more pain than he wanted to admit. "What happened?" "The storm knocked over a bookshelf. I caught it. The bookshelf won." He tried to wrap his hand with his tie, which was both impressively resourceful and completely ineffective. Maggie didn't ask permission. She grabbed his hand, his non-injured hand, and pulled him toward the bathroom. "Come on, tyrant. Let's fix you up before you bleed out, and I have to explain to Mrs. Pemberton why there's a body." "I'm not a tyrant." "You literally banned smiling in your presence." "I never—" He paused. "Did Mrs. Pemberton actually tell you that?" "She said you don't appreciate gentileness," which I interpreted as smiling. "I don't appreciate fake kindness. There's a difference." He sat on the edge of the bathtub while she rummaged through the medicine cabinet. "Everyone wants something. They smile while calculating what they can take from you. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Maggie found antiseptic and bandages. "Hand." He extended it reluctantly. The cut wasn't deep, but it was nasty. She cleaned it carefully, aware of how close they were, how his breath caught when the antiseptic stung, how his eyes never left her face. "You're good at this," he said quietly. "Farm girl. I've patched up everything from chicken attacks to tractor accidents." She wrapped the bandage with practiced efficiency. "My grandmother used to say I had healing hands, though she also said I had my grandfather's stubborn streak, so her judgment was questionable." "Tell me about her. Your grandmother." Maggie looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because I'm sitting in a dark bathroom, bleeding during a storm that apparently wants to murder me with my own furniture, distract me." So she did. She told him about the farm, about learning to bake pies at 5 years old, about her grandmother's terrible jokes and fierce love. She told him about losing the farm, about the hospital bills, about being so desperate for this job that she'd signed a contract without reading it properly. "I read it," Thaddeus said when she finished. "Your contract. It's exploitative. It's $8,000 a month. It's designed to trap you. Confidentiality clauses that would bankrupt you if you left. Non-compete agreements that don't make sense for a housekeeper." His voice had gone cold, but not at her, for her. "Who negotiated this? Mrs. Pemberton?" "No. This has my father's fingerprints all over it." He stood abruptly, wincing. "He handles hiring when I'm traveling. I should have checked. Your father lives in the West Wing. We don't speak." He said it flatly, matter of fact, but Maggie heard the pain underneath. "He believes in controlling people through contracts and fear." "I believe in—" He stopped. "I don't know what I believe in anymore." The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Maggie's chest. This wasn't the tyrant from the rumors. This was a man who caught falling bookshelves, who played piano when he thought no one could hear, who got angry at unfair contracts. "I think you believe in more than you let yourself admit," she said softly. They stood there in the candle-lit bathroom, the storm raging outside, something electric and dangerous sparking between them. Maggie. The way he said her name, rough, almost reverent, made her shiver. "You should go." "Why?" "Because I'm trying very hard to be professional, and you're making it extremely difficult." Her heart hammered. "What if I don't want you to be professional?" "Then you're more reckless than I thought." But he moved closer, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. "You work for me. There are rules, boundaries. You're the one who makes the rules." "Exactly. And I break them, and you get hurt, and—" He stopped himself, looking tortured. "I won't be another thing you sacrifice for money you need." The honesty of it, the raw consideration, undid her. How was this the same man who'd sneered at her from a puddle? "What if it's not about the money?" Maggie whispered. "Then you're an idiot." But he smiled when he said it, sad and fond. "And I'm a bigger one for wishing things were different." The lights flickered back on, harsh and intrusive. The moment shattered. Thaddeus stepped back, the walls reconstructing. "Thank you. For the hand. Anytime you need patching up after fighting furniture." He almost laughed. Almost. "Good night, Maggie." She left, but turned at the door. "Thaddeus? Things could be different. If you wanted them to be." "That's the problem," he said, so quietly she almost missed it. "I'm starting to want exactly that." Maggie walked back to her room with her heart racing and her mind spinning. She was falling for her boss, her complicated, damaged, surprisingly decent boss who played piano and caught bookshelves and worried about unfair contracts. This was either the best or worst thing she'd ever done. Possibly both. Maggie thought she'd been subtle about skipping meals. She'd eat breakfast, toast and coffee, enough to function, then save her lunch money to send to the hospital for her grandmother's care. The staff meals were free, technically, but taking food felt like stealing when she could just not eat. She'd done it before. She could do it again. Apparently, she wasn't as subtle as she thought. "Miss Bloom, my office. Now." Thaddeus's voice cut through the afternoon silence like a knife. Maggie nearly dropped the vase she was dusting. She'd been successfully avoiding him for 2 days since the storm, since the bathroom, since— I'm starting to want exactly that, since her heart had decided to completely betray her common sense. She found him behind his mahogany desk, looking like a CEO about to fire someone. Except his eyes weren't cold. They were concerned, which was somehow worse. "Sit. I prefer to stand when being yelled at, better for a quick escape." "I'm not going to yell. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to answer honestly." He leaned forward. "When was the last time you ate a full meal?" Maggie's stomach chose that exact moment to growl traitorously. I ate toast this morning. Toast. This morning. His jaw clenched. And yesterday? Also toast? Maggie. He rarely used her first name, which meant he was either very angry or very worried. Mrs. Chen told me you've been declining lunch for a week. The cook is taking it personally. I'm not hungry during the day. I eat at night. Don't lie to me. He stood, walking around the desk. You're sending your entire salary to the hospital, aren't you? Living on toast and coffee. That's none of your business. It became my business when I found you nearly passed out in the hallway yesterday. Mrs. Pemberton said you claimed it was the heat. Damn Mrs. Pemberton and her watchful eyes. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're malnourished and stubborn. He grabbed his jacket. We're fixing this, now. We're not doing anything. You're my boss, not my keeper. Currently, I'm the man standing between you and a fainting spell that could crack your skull open on my marble floors. So yes, I am your keeper. He held out his hand. Come on. Where? Dinner, real dinner, with protein and vegetables and things that don't come from a toaster. I can't have dinner with you. Why not? Because I'm falling for you, and sitting across a table sharing a meal feels dangerously like a date, and I don't think my heart can handle pretending it's not. Because it's inappropriate. So is watching my employee starve herself. His expression softened. Please, Maggie, let me do this one decent thing. How was she supposed to argue with that? The restaurant was small, tucked away on a quiet street, the kind of place where everyone knew Thaddeus by name and pretended not to stare. You come here often, Maggie observed, studying the menu that had no prices listed. Never a good sign. It's owned by the grandmother of a friend. She bullies me into eating vegetables. He ordered for both of them in rapid-fire Italian that made the server smile. You'll like the carbonara. And before you argue about cost, I'm expensing this as a workplace safety measure. You can't expense dinner with your housekeeper. I can expense anything I want. I own the company. He poured her water. Now tell me about your grandmother. How is she really? So Maggie told him. About the good days when her grandmother recognized her, made jokes, talked about going home. About the bad days when the pneumonia came back, when the machines beeped urgently, when the doctors used words like complicated and uncertain. She's a fighter, Maggie said, surprised to find tears threatening. But she's tired, and I'm so scared that... She stopped, unable to finish. Thaddeus reached across the table and took her hand. Just held it, steady and warm in there. You're allowed to be scared, he said quietly. You're allowed to not be okay. I don't have time to not be okay. Then be not okay here. For 5 minutes. With me. So she was. She let herself cry a little in a fancy Italian restaurant, holding hands with her impossibly complicated boss, who was looking at her like she was something precious. The food arrived, steaming plates of pasta that smelled like heaven. Maggie ate like a woman possessed, and Thaddeus watched with undisguised satisfaction. Better? He asked when she'd cleaned her plate. I'm not going to admit you were right. Your empty plate already did. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. You know what my father said when my mother died? He said emotion was weakness, that I needed to man up and run the company. I was 19. Thaddeus, I'm telling you this because I spent 10 years believing him. 10 years being exactly what he wanted, cold, efficient, profitable. He met her eyes. And then a girl from Oklahoma fell into my library covered in soap, apologized with actual sincerity, and I remembered what it felt like to be human. Maggie's breath caught. You were always human. I'm not sure about that. But around you, I want to be. He still held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. This thing between us. There's a thing between us? Her heart hammered. You know there is. I'm trying to be noble about it, to do the right thing. But Maggie... He leaned closer. You make nobility very difficult. Good. Because nobility is overrated. They were inches apart now, his eyes dark and intense, his focus entirely on her mouth. The restaurant faded. Nothing existed except this moment, this man, this feeling of falling and not wanting to stop. "I'm going to kiss you," he whispered, "unless you tell me not to." "I'm definitely not going to tell you." His phone exploded with sound. Both of them jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Thaddeus grabbed it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. "It's my father. There's a board meeting. Emergency. I have to—" He looked at Maggie with such regret it hurt. "I'm sorry." "It's fine." It wasn't fine. Her lips were tingling from a kiss that hadn't even happened. "It's not fine. This is terrible timing." He stood, threw cash on the table, then paused. "Maggie, this conversation isn't over. Promise? Promise." He touched her cheek, achingly brief. "Go home, eat the dessert I ordered for you, and stop trying to save the world alone." Then he was gone, and Maggie was left with carbonara, unfinished confessions, and a heart that was completely, irrevocably his. Maggie met Thaddeus's father on a Wednesday morning, and within 5 minutes, she understood exactly why Thaddeus had walls built around his heart. She was carrying fresh linens up the main staircase when a voice like gravel and ice stopped her cold. "You, girl, what's your name?" The man blocking her path was older, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a car. He had Thaddeus's sharp features, but where Thaddeus's eyes could be warm, this man's were calculating. Cold. "Magnolia Bloom, sir. I'm the housekeeper." "Yes, I hired you." He looked her up and down like she was livestock at auction. "Though I'm rethinking that decision. You've been here 3 weeks. Mrs. Pemberton tells me you've been fraternizing with my son." Maggie's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play stupid. It's unbecoming." He stepped closer, and she fought the urge to back away. "Thaddeus took you to Giovanni's, made quite a scene, apparently, holding hands across the table like teenagers." "We were just talking." "You were scheming." His voice dropped to something venomous. "I know your type. Small-town girl, sob story about a sick grandmother, batting your eyes at the lonely rich boy. How much were you planning to extort from him?" "I would never. Here's what's going to happen." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Inside is a check for $50,000. You take it, sign a new confidentiality agreement, and disappear. Tonight, no dramatic goodbyes." Maggie stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "You're trying to pay me to leave?" "I'm trying to prevent my son from making another catastrophic mistake with an inappropriate woman." His smile was cruel. "The last one was a gold digger too. Left him at the altar when she found out the prenup was ironclad. I won't watch him get destroyed again." Everything clicked into place. Thaddeus's walls, his distrust of kindness, his belief that everyone wanted something. "I'm not leaving," Maggie said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. "Then you're fired, effective immediately." "You can't fire her." Both of them turned. Thaddeus stood at the top of the stairs, dressed for the office, his expression absolutely murderous. "Thaddeus, good morning." His father's tone shifted to something falsely pleasant. "I was just handling a staffing issue." "By bribing my employee? By insulting her?" Thaddeus descended the stairs slowly, each step measured. "You've crossed a lot of lines, Father, but this is spectacular even for you. I'm protecting you. You're trying to control me. Again." Thaddeus stood beside Maggie, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Miss Bloom is an exemplary employee. What I do with her on my personal time is none of your business. Everything in this house is my business. I own 40% of this company. And I own 60. Math was never your strong suit." Thaddeus's voice could cut glass. "Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to apologize to Miss Bloom. Then you're going to go back to your wing and stay there. You're choosing a housekeeper over your own father? I'm choosing a decent human being over a manipulative tyrant. It's not a difficult choice. The silence was deafening. Maggie watched something break in the older man's face. Rage, hurt, disbelief. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "When she breaks your heart and takes half your fortune, remember I tried to save you. Get out." His father left, his footsteps echoing like gunshots. Thaddeus turned to Maggie, his anger dissolving into concern. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "I'm fine. Thaddeus, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He took her hands, both of them, like he needed to anchor himself. "What he said to you about you, it was vile. You're not a gold digger. You're not scheming. You're the most honest person I've ever met. He's your father. He's a bully who thinks love is a weakness to exploit." Thaddeus's grip tightened. "When I was engaged before, he investigated her, found out she was only interested in the money. He was right that time, and I never forgave myself for being naive. But Maggie..." His voice cracked slightly. "You're nothing like her. You're real. How do you know? We barely know each other. Because you cried in a restaurant about your grandmother. Because you apologized for breaking my crystal. Because you listen to me play piano at night and think I don't know." He pulled her closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Because when I offered you $50,000 to quit, you looked offended instead of tempted. That was your father offering. Same difference. The point is..." He took a shaky breath. "I'm terrified of this, of you, of what I feel when you're around. But I'm more terrified of letting my father's poison destroy something that might be extraordinary." Maggie's heart was doing somersaults. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying screw appropriate. Screw the rules." His eyes blazed. "I'm saying I haven't stopped thinking about almost kissing you for 3 days. I'm saying you walked into my life covered in soap and somehow made everything make sense again. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me, and it includes cleaning supplies." He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was beautiful. "Go out with me, a real date, not a workplace intervention dinner. You're still technically my boss. Then I'm giving you a raise and making it weird." He touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Please, let me take you somewhere without interruptions or emergencies or bitter fathers with checkbooks." "Yes." The word came out breathless. "Yes, absolutely yes. Tonight, 7 o'clock. Wear something that's not a gray uniform. I only own 3 outfits. Then wear anything. You'd look beautiful in a potato sack." Maggie grinned. "Did the tyrant of Beacon Hill just give me a compliment? Don't get used to it." But he was smiling too, soft and genuine. "Thank you for not taking his money." "I don't want his money. I just want..." She stopped, suddenly shy. "What do you want, Maggie?" "You," she whispered. "I want you." His eyes darkened. He leaned in, and this time, nothing interrupted them. The kiss was soft, tentative, perfect. Like coming home. Like finding something she didn't know she'd been searching for. When they pulled apart, Thaddeus looked dazed. "We're going to be terrible at professional boundaries." "The absolute worst," Maggie agreed happily. Their first real date was perfect. Too perfect. The kind of perfect that made Maggie nervous because life had taught her that happiness this pure usually came with a price tag. Thaddeus took her to a rooftop garden she didn't know existed in Boston. Fairy lights strung between trees, a table set for 2, the city sparkling below them like scattered diamonds. "You rented an entire rooftop garden?" Maggie asked, breathless. "I know the owner. Called in a favor." He pulled out her chair, and she was struck again by how different he was from the scowling man in the library. This Thaddeus smiled easily, laughed at her terrible jokes, and looked at her like she was the only person in the world. They talked for hours. About everything and nothing. He told her about building his company from near bankruptcy after his mother died, about the pressure of the family name, about how he'd forgotten what it felt like to just be himself. "You make me want to be better," he said over dessert, his hand covering hers. Not perfect, just real. You are real. You've always been real, she squeezed his fingers. You just needed someone to see it. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Maggie thought maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could happen to girls from Oklahoma. Her phone rang at 10:47 p.m. The hospital. Her grandmother. The world tilted sideways. Thaddeus drove her to the hospital himself, breaking every speed limit, his hand gripping hers the entire way. The doctor met them in the hallway, with the expression that every family member dreads. Practice sympathy mixed with clinical detachment. I'm sorry, Miss Bloom. Your grandmother's pneumonia has progressed to sepsis. We're doing everything we can, but the next 48 hours are critical. You should prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. As if you could prepare for losing the only family you had left. Maggie sat beside her grandmother's bed, holding her fragile hand, watching machines breathe for her. She looked so small, so breakable. This woman who'd raised her, who'd taught her to be strong, who'd sacrificed everything. I'm sorry, Maggie whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. Sorry I couldn't save the farm. Sorry the money isn't coming fast enough. Sorry for everything. Stop. Thaddeus's voice was gentle. He'd been sitting in the corner for 3 hours, just present, not hovering. None of this is your fault. I left her, moved to Boston for money. You left to save her. There's a difference. He knelt beside her chair. And you're not alone in this. Not anymore. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into his strength and let someone else carry the weight for once. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your grandmother's hospital account. A friend. Maggie pulled up the patient portal with shaking hands. The balance showed 0. Every bill, every outstanding charge, paid in full. Thaddeus, her voice cracked. Did you? I couldn't let you carry that burden alone. He said it simply, like it wasn't a massive, life-changing gesture. Consider it a bonus, or a gift. I don't care what you call it. That's over $200,000. It's money. I have plenty. Your grandmother has one life. He touched her face. Let me help you, please. Maggie should have felt relieved, grateful. Instead, she felt something cold settling in her stomach. His father's words echoed. Small-town girl, sob story about a sick grandmother, batting your eyes at the lonely rich boy. Everyone's going to think I'm exactly what your father said, she whispered. A gold digger who manipulated you. I don't care what people think. But I do. She pulled away, standing on shaky legs. Thaddeus, this is too much. It changes everything. It changes nothing. I care about you. Your grandmother's medical care being paid is a side effect of that. A $200,000 side effect! Her voice rose, and several nurses glanced their way. Don't you see? Every moment we have now will be tainted by this. People will say I traded us for money. Let them say it. I know the truth. But do you? The words burst out before she could stop them. Your father will use this as proof I'm using you. Your business partners, your friends, everyone will question my motives. And worse, you'll wonder too. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually you'll look at me and think, what if she only stayed for the money? That's ridiculous. Is it? Your ex-fiancé was with you for money. Your father's made you paranoid about people's intentions. How long before you start questioning mine? Never. But she could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes, the old wounds reopening. Maggie, I trust you. You want to trust me? That's different. She felt tears burning. I can't do this. I can't be another person who takes from you and leaves you wondering if it was real. So you're leaving first? That's your solution? I'm leaving before this destroys both of us. She grabbed her bag with trembling hands. Thank you for paying the bills. I'll find a way to pay you back. I don't want your money. His voice cracked. I want you. Why can't you see that? Because I've learned that wanting something doesn't make it sustainable. She moved toward the door, her heart shattering with each step. You deserve someone who doesn't come with complications and medical debt and a father who hates her. I deserve you. He caught her hand. Please, don't do this. Don't let my father win. For a moment, Maggie almost stayed. Almost let herself believe love could overcome $200,000 and family disapproval and the massive gulf between their worlds. Then her grandmother's monitor beeped alarmingly, and nurses rushed in, and everything dissolved into chaos. When the crisis stabilized an hour later, Thaddeus was gone. On the chair where he'd sat was a note in his precise handwriting. The money is yours. No strings, no expectations. Whether you stay or go, whether you love me or decide I'm too complicated, it doesn't matter. Your grandmother deserves to live, and you deserve to not carry that weight alone. This isn't a transaction. It's a gift. The only gift I know how to give. T. Maggie pressed the note to her chest and cried. For her grandmother. For Thaddeus. For the perfect date that had turned into a nightmare. For the impossible choice between love and pride. She'd come to Boston to save her grandmother. She hadn't planned on losing her heart in the process. 3 weeks. That's how long Maggie lasted before her grandmother stage-whispered the truth that changed everything. You're an idiot, sweetheart. Maggie looked up from her book, shocked. Her grandmother had been getting stronger every day, the infection finally retreating, color returning to her cheeks. This was the most alert she'd been in months. Excuse me? That boy who paid my bills. The one who sat in that chair for 8 hours straight when I was dying. The one you're moping over like a lovesick puppy. Her grandmother's eyes were sharp despite her frail body. You pushed him away, didn't you? It's complicated. Love is always complicated. That doesn't mean you run from it. She gripped Maggie's hand with surprising strength. Pride is a luxury, baby girl. Love is a necessity. And you're letting pride steal your necessity. His father thinks I'm a gold digger. His father's opinion doesn't sleep beside you at night, doesn't hold your hand, doesn't make your heart race. Her grandmother smiled. I didn't raise you to be a coward, Magnolia June Bloom. I'm not a coward. I'm being realistic. You're being scared. There's a difference. She squeezed tighter. That man paid for a stranger's medical care because he loves my granddaughter. He didn't ask for gratitude or repayment or anything except for you to let him care. And you threw it back in his face. The words hit like a sledgehammer. I was trying to protect him. From what? Happiness? Her grandmother's laugh turned into a cough, but her eyes danced. Go get him. Before that impressive stupidity becomes permanent. He probably hates me now. Only one way to find out. Maggie returned to the mansion on a gray October afternoon, her heart hammering against her ribs. Mrs. Pemberton answered the door, her expression carefully neutral. Miss Bloom. I wasn't expecting you. Is he here, Thaddeus? Mr. Blackwell is in his study. He's been unwell since you left. The older woman's voice softened slightly. Perhaps you should announce yourself before entering. He's thrown 3 assistants out this week. Maggie climbed the familiar stairs, each step feeling like walking toward either salvation or destruction. She knocked on the study door. Go away. She opened it anyway. Thaddeus sat behind his desk, looking like hell. Unshaven, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. Papers were scattered everywhere, and she counted 4 empty coffee cups. He looked up, and the expression that crossed his face, hope, pain, anger, longing, nearly broke her. Maggie. Her name came out raw. What are you doing here? My grandmother called me an idiot. Smart woman. He stood slowly like he didn't trust his legs. Is she? Getting better, thanks to you. Maggie stepped closer. Thaddeus, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I let fear and pride ruin something beautiful, and I've regretted it every single day for 3 weeks. You left. The words were quiet, but devastating. You looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the complications. No, I decided I wasn't worth the complications for you. She moved around the desk. Your father was in my head. The money was too much. I convinced myself that eventually you'd resent me, that I'd become another person who took from you, and you were wrong. He said it flatly. Spectacularly, completely wrong. I know that now. Do you? He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Because I can't do this again, Maggie. Can't open myself up and watch you decide it's too hard. I barely survived the first time. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm staying. She took his hands, those familiar, strong hands. I love you. I've loved you since you defended me to your father. Maybe even since the library disaster. And I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of living without you. You love me. He said it like he was testing the words, seeing if they were real. Desperately. Inconveniently. Completely. That's the most romantic and irritating declaration I've ever heard. But his eyes were softening, hope creeping back in. You destroyed me when you left. Then let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you. The rest of your life. That's a long time. Not long enough. She pulled him closer. I'm done running. From you, from us, from whatever complications come with loving someone. My grandmother didn't raise a coward, and I'm done acting like one. Thaddeus cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away tears she didn't know she was crying. Promise me, no more running. I promise, no more running. She smiled through the tears. Though I might still be clumsy and disaster-prone and accidentally destroy expensive things, I wouldn't have you any other way. He kissed her then, deep, desperate, full of 3 weeks of missing her. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. I fired my father yesterday. You what? Removed him from the board. Bought out his shares. He's moving to Florida to terrorize retirees. Thaddeus grinned. Turns out I don't need his approval or his poison. I just need you. That's incredibly dramatic and romantic. I learned from the best. You did fall into my library covered in soap. I'm never living that down, am I? Never. He kissed her again, softer this time. Move back in. Not as my housekeeper, as my... He paused. What are you now? Girlfriend sounds too casual. How about your favorite disaster? Perfect. Move in as my favorite disaster. Let me take care of you while you finish saving the world. Deal, but I'm paying rent. Maggie. Compromise. I'll pay $1 a month, and you can claim you're making money off me. He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was beautiful. You're impossible. You love me anyway. God help me, I really do. 1 year later, the library looked different now, lighter, happier. Plants sat on the windowsills, colorful throw pillows decorated the leather chairs, and a photo of Maggie covered in soap, taken by Thaddeus 3 days after their reconciliation as a commemorative disaster photo, hung on the wall in an expensive frame. Maggie stood on the infamous rolling ladder, carefully dusting the crystal glasses that had started everything. She'd insisted on keeping her cleaning duties, much to Mrs. Pemberton's bewilderment and Thaddeus's amusement. Some things are sacred, Maggie had declared, like cleaning my own disaster site. You're going to fall again, Thaddeus called from the doorway, looking unfairly handsome in casual jeans and a sweater. A year together, and he still made her heart stutter. I have excellent ladder skills now. I've taken a course. You took an online video tutorial. Still counts. She climbed down carefully, triumphantly intact. See? No catastrophes. The day is young. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Your grandmother called. She's bringing pie. She's not supposed to be baking yet. I told her that. She told me to stop being a worrywart and that you'd defend her right to bake. He smiled. You two are terrifyingly similar. Maggie's grandmother had made a full recovery, moving into a cottage Thaddeus had happened to own on the mansion's property. She'd seen through the gesture immediately, but accepted with grace, declaring that stubbornness runs in the family, but so does knowing when to accept a blessing. She baked constantly now, supplying the entire staff with pies and cookies and unsolicited relationship advice. "Did you finish the proposal?" Maggie asked, straightening his collar unnecessarily, just to touch him. "Sent it an hour ago. The board approved the foundation." His eyes lit up, the same way they always did when talking about their project. The Magnolia Bloom Foundation for Medical Debt Relief. It's official. Tears pricked Maggie's eyes. They'd spent months planning it, using a portion of Thaddeus's fortune to help families drowning in medical bills, just like she had been. Her story had become their mission. "My name is on a foundation. That's surreal. Your name is going to be on a lot more than that soon." He had that look, nervous, excited, scheming. "What did you do?" "Nothing. Yet." He took her hand, leading her toward the window where afternoon light streamed in. "Do you remember what you said that first day, when my father offered you $50,000 to leave?" "I said he could keep his blood money." "You looked at that check like it was insulting, like your integrity was worth more than any amount he could offer." Thaddeus knelt, and Maggie's breath caught. "You've taught me that the best things in life aren't bought. They're earned, fought for, and sometimes they fall into your library covered in soap and change everything." "Thaddeus," her voice cracked. "I'm not good with words. I'm better with spreadsheets and hostile takeovers. But Maggie," he pulled out a small velvet box. "You make me want to be good with words, good with feelings, good at being human instead of just being successful." The ring was perfect, a simple diamond that caught the light like the crystal glasses above them. Not ostentatious, just right. "Magnolia June Bloom, favorite disaster of my life. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life falling into chaos with you?" "That's the worst proposal ever," she laughed through tears. "And the best, yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, of course, because he'd stolen one of her other rings to get the size right, and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at once. "Mrs. Pemberton is going to be insufferable," Maggie murmured against his lips. "She's been planning our wedding since month 2. She has a binder. I've seen it. It's terrifying." He grinned. "But she also bet me $20 you'd cry when I proposed, so she wins that. You bet on my emotional response. The entire staff had a pool. Mrs. Chen bet you'd laugh. Your grandmother bet you'd say yes before I finished asking." "Did she win?" "Technically no, but she'll claim victory anyway. She's already crocheting baby blankets." "We're not even married yet." "Try telling her that. I've learned not to argue with your grandmother. She's scarier than my father ever was." They stood in the library, their library now, surrounded by books and light and the ghosts of their first disastrous meeting. Outside, Mrs. Pemberton was probably already calling caterers. Maggie's grandmother was definitely baking a celebratory pie. The staff was likely collecting on their bets. But in this moment, it was just them, the tyrant and the disaster, the CEO and the girl from Oklahoma who'd fallen into his life and refused to leave. "I love you," Maggie whispered. "Even though you're dramatic and overprepared and definitely had this planned for weeks. Months, actually. I've been carrying that ring around since June." He kissed her nose. "And I love you, even though you're clumsy and stubborn and insist on cleaning your own bathroom. Some things are non-negotiable. I'm learning that." He pulled her close. "Ready to face the chaos? Your grandmother's probably already here, and Mrs. Pemberton is definitely watching from somewhere. With you? Always." They walked out of the library hand in hand, toward the sound of her grandmother's laughter, and Mrs. Pemberton's delighted gasp, and a future that looked nothing like Maggie had planned, but everything like she'd secretly dreamed. Sometimes the best love stories start with disasters. Sometimes they start with soapy water and broken crystal, and a girl desperate enough to answer a suspicious internet ad. Sometimes they start with a man cold enough to be called a tyrant, learning to smile again. And sometimes, just sometimes, they end with forever, the end.